Hello, everyone. Welcome to NFL Inside the Lab. I am your host, Brian. I'm here with Ian and Matthew Friedman. As always, every Sunday, we are here to talk about some of the injury news that we just got, how it affects projection changes. And then, as always, we'll spend a couple minutes at the end answering your questions. All right, Ian, let's hop in here to the matchups page and start going through some of the injuries here. Let's start with the one that we just got, I think the most recent one, which is that Rishard Matthews is not going to play. What are your thoughts on this offense without him and Corey Davis as the sort of projected chalk as a result of this?
Yeah, Matthews out, had that late week hamstring injury and will not be going. It's a tricky spot for Davis, I think, more so than we might think. Obviously, Colts have been one of the worst defenses against receivers this whole season. But, I mean, Rashaan Melvin is really good, and we're now projecting him to see a lot more of Davis than he would otherwise. I mean, it wasn't too long ago that we saw Antonio Brown really disappoint a smash spot like this. But, I mean, there's definitely still a lot to like about Davis. I wouldn't overthink it too much, but definitely would still pay attention to those other options like Eric Decker and Delaney Walker. That might not be as chalky, but still have a good matchup against some of the not so great Colts DBs.
Yeah, Freeman, what are your thoughts on this situation? We get some sharp money today on the Colts, driving this down to 3. What are your thoughts on this matchup? Some sharp money on the Colts and then on the over. So it's sort of an interesting one to peg. A lot of people are on some of these other games. This is sort of a weird one to dissect.
Yes, sorry, I was on mute there. So as you mentioned, it is an interesting game. Looking at Davis specifically, he's a guy, even though he does have a tougher matchup against Rashaan Melvin, he's still getting a lot of targets. He's been close to some touchdowns. I would take a look for people who are interested in this in our props tool at some of the propositions that are available for him there. I think there's some value there. So even if you were a little hesitant about his potential and how he might fit into a lineup, you could still maybe get some benefit from the extra targets you will probably see by getting some exposure that way.
Yep. Cool. Let's keep on moving here. Let's go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. It was a little up in the air what was going to be going on with Jalen Ramsey. Ian, what's happening with him? Is he expected to play?
Yeah, Ramsey will be out there. He actually hurt his hand in practice on Friday. Told reporters afterwards he wouldn't be playing, but things got better over the weekend, so we now fully expect him to be out there. Is worth mentioning, I mean, this Jaguars secondary is so good that they've mostly left Ramsey on his side this season because A.J. Boye is a baller too. And Aaron Colvin's really good in the slot, so really doesn't affect our Larry Fitzgerald projection all that much because we still believe Fitz will run most of his routes in the slot against Colvin. But at the same time, I mean, Ramsey is one of the top 3 to 5 cornerbacks in the league. So obviously really good for that Jags defense to have him out there.
For sure. Yeah. Arizona implied for only 16.3 points on the week for a reason. Obviously, this defense continues to be elite, and the Jags, I think they have, Matt, you probably were looking at this earlier. I think they have the highest sack total, our sack projection in our models at 4.9. You like this defense, especially with Ramsey in here as a DFS play?
Yeah, it's a nice defense. And as Ian mentioned, I don't think the addition of Ramsey really changes much for any of the receivers or, like for Gabbert in a hashtag revenge game. Like, I don't think it really matters much for any of those guys. One thing to note is that John Brown is out for this game. So we probably will see some J.J. Nelson, and I would be interested to see, because we will have Nelson at some point against Boye or Ramsey, to see how those two guys who are more physical corners, how they can handle the speed of Nelson. Because if there is a type of player who could beat them, I think it's Nelson. They could, they should be able to press him on every play, but if he's able to get by them, they can't catch him.
Cool. Let's keep on moving here. Let's go to the Denver Broncos here. We've had Emmanuel Sanders sort of in and out over the last little bit. Ian, what's the status here, and what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yes, he's had that nagging low ankle injury, but we're expecting him to be out there and play through that. Really good matchup, obviously, for these outside receivers. We'll see if they can still get the job done with Paxton Lynch now under center. But, whenever you're going up against the 32nd ranked defense and pass DVOA, that's always something we like to see from our wide receivers. Whether or not he can get the ball in some fantasy-friendly situations or not, I guess, is the big question.
For sure. Okay. Matt, any thoughts on this one? This is one that we identified this game as a potential like sneaky shootout. The over under has been going down. So obviously a tough spot, but you even talked about Paxton Lynch and how his prop market was higher than what was going on with our projections. What are your thoughts on like this game?
I think it's sneaky here. The Raiders literally don't have an interception on the entire season, which is amazing and incredibly sad. And if there is a quarterback who can get them that interception, it's probably Paxton Lynch. But by that same token, he is a first-round pick for whatever that's worth. He does have two good receivers there. He's going against a team that's horrible. I mean, there's a chance that there's some Paxton Lynch goodness here. You don't want overexposure, but we're projecting him right now for only like 2 to 4% ownership. Like, it's going to be low. And so if you can still get some exposure, maybe even a little overweight without being like super exposed, I don't know. There's some goodness there.
Cool. All right. Let's keep on moving here. Ian, what are some other injuries we need to hit on?
Let's see. Other guys. Matt Forte, we will have in. We can talk about that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So what's going on with that situation in the Jets backfield?
Yeah, so we saw Matt Forte was out actually week 10. They had this whole bye week to get him healthy. He didn't even practice until Friday, but he will be out there, making this the same old Powell, McGuire, Forte committee we've seen all season. So, it would have been nice to kind of see two backs. Either way, it's a really tough matchup against this Panthers run D. I believe they ranked third in rush DVOA. So with, workload questions surrounding the whole backfield and the tough matchup, it's a situation I'd probably try to avoid.
Same there, Freeman. Probably not a whole lot here, honestly.
Yeah, not much interest in those guys. Really, and I'm sure Ian's going to talk about this, but the injury issues that I'm most interested in are the Saints cornerbacks and how that could impact.
That's the next one. Yeah, that was the one I wanted to leave for the end, the last injury situation, just so we could spend some time in this game. We've had some injury stuff going on all week with the Rams and the Saints. Ian, can you walk us through what we know so far?
Yeah, so we've already gotten final statuses on these Saints cornerbacks, which is nice. Marshawn Lattimore, their rookie, we've seen him one of the best outside corners in the league this season. He is out with an ankle injury. And Ken Crawley, their other outside corner, who's also been low-key really good as well, he's out with an ab issue. So we're going to see P.J. Williams out as one corner and Devontae Harris as the other. It's major downgrades from both Lattimore and Crawley. They will be getting Kenny Vaccaro back in the slot. He was doing a really nice job there as their nickel back before that groin injury. Still, though, I mean, it's tough to say if he's really a big hindrance or reason not to play Kupp in this matchup, especially when we've seen Kupp have 23 more targets than Watkins this season. I mean, he's got 16 targets in the red zone, which is fourth among all receivers. So kind of surprising how much they feed him there. But yeah, definitely an advantage where, we've kind of talked about this season. Cameron Jordan's a beast, but really, the playmakers in the Saints defense are in their secondary, not so much their front seven. So if we get a limited secondary, it's definitely what we want to see.
Yeah, Freeman. So this is a very interesting matchup. Obviously, the highest total of the week, it is up to 54. It's been sort of oscillating between 53 and 54 the last couple of days. Currently at 54 in most markets. It's one of the things that we identified as maybe it could go under. Maybe this would be more of a run-heavy game because these teams both have very good secondaries and are somewhat weak against the run. But with all these injuries, that might not be the case today. So what are your thoughts on sort of game flow? And are you higher on, some of these Rams receivers? We even got word that Reynolds might be, what was the quote, like a little bit featured today. I don't know how to quantify that into a projection. But seems to be some cheap guys in this game and a juicy total for sure.
Yeah, Kupp is the one I'm most interested in. And what has prevented the Saints so far this year from being a pass-heavy team that we've seen has been, well, two things. One, they've had a really good offensive line that can bolster their good running backs, so that's good. But they've been so good at shutting down opposing passing games that they haven't needed to have Breeze throw the ball 50 times per game. But we might see some major reversion back to the horrible Saints defense of previous seasons. because they are really without their main guys. And then one thing Ian didn't mention, but Alex Okafor, I think he was out last week too, but out for the season with an injury. So that's something that they're going to miss in terms of pass rushing. So they're injured. Like Cup is going to, I mean, I don't know. I think they're going to put him a little more outside, move him around in a Robert Woods type of way. I'm not too interested in Reynolds. Watkins is interesting in terms of like a GPP play, but he doesn't get consistent volume, and I don't think he plays enough like Woods to warrant the team giving him much more volume. I think Cup out of the receivers is the guy that should probably be targeted.
For sure. Okay, let's talk about a couple other interesting spots here. Let's see. Let's jump around. Let's go to this Seahawks 49ers game here. So we have Russell Wilson as the chalkiest quarterback going against the 49ers. We know this is a division game. Using sort of our trends tool, we see that Russell Wilson has been sort of okay against the 49ers historically, but a very fast-paced team in the 49ers and not a great defense. Do we have any word on Jimmy Graham, Ian, and what are your thoughts on this offense?
Yeah, we're expecting Graham to be out there. He's been missing practice the last few weeks with nagging ankle injury, but we're expecting him to be mostly to 100% or about what he's been the last few weeks. Big matchup, I think, to keep an eye on here is Dougie Baldwin versus Quan Williams there in the slot. Williams has just really not been good this entire season. He was banged up for a little bit, but now he's back out there. And he's allowing the most receptions and the fewest amount of cover snaps in the league among full-time nickel corners. So, I think it is worth being a little bit concerned about Russell Wilson, his home away splits and all that. But, hopefully he gets a little more protection with Luke Jokel back there at left guard. And I think it's a winnable matchup for Dougie. For
sure. Let's keep on moving here. Let's go to the Atlanta Falcons. Sort of an interesting spot here, Freedman. People definitely want to roster Julio Jones. I think in our models, he has the highest projection. The two guys with the highest projected ownership in the slate are in this game, in Tevin Coleman and Julio Jones. What are your thoughts on rostering them together against this Buccaneers defense? How are you dealing with just the massive ownership projections for these guys in this game?
I don't know. When the Falcons are at home as favorites in the Dan Quinn era, and I feel like I say this all the time, they run the ball, they don't pass the ball. So even though it is a great passing game matchup for Julio and Matt Ryan by extension, we just haven't seen them really connect all that much because they haven't needed to. They've just dedicated themselves to running the ball. And it seems like they have the opportunity to do that with Tevin Coleman. So I understand the enthusiasm around Julio Jones. It looks like a smash spot. He probably won't have a bad game. I see reason for there to be caution for why he wouldn't have an eruption game. And especially in GPPs at 31 to 40% ownership, he's being rostered as if he has a high likelihood of hitting an eruption game. So I would be fine actually with fading him a little bit in GPPs and going more to Coleman.
Yeah, I think you said that in our Flex podcast. It's always a terrifying situation to be fading Julio Jones, just the raw talent for sure. But at almost 40% ownership, it could be an interesting spot here. Ian, any thoughts on Falcons you want to get in there?
I was going to say, I think Sanu's kind of in a good spot here. We've seen him in Sarkisian's new offense really emerge as more of a true wide receiver too than I think he was last year. And, when he's getting all these red zone looks, he's been the one getting most of Julio's touchdowns. And he actually has probably the best matchup since Vernon Hargraves, their slot cornerbacks, out with a hamstring injury. So, like Freeman said, definitely can't I'm not sure if we should be projecting a massive passing performance, but I like Sanu's matchup there in the slot.
For sure. Getting a lot of questions earlier in the show, so I want to hit on this game. This Pittsburgh Steelers Green Bay Packers game. Obviously, this one is not on the DraftKings main slate. It is on the FanDuel one. Pittsburgh Steelers have obviously looked better of late with their offense. We have no Juju. Ian, what are you expecting as far as offense goes without Juju? You think that means Martavis Bryant moves into his role that he had last year, or do you think it's just the Le'Veon Antonio Brown show continued?
Yeah, so initial reports from Jeremy Fowler, one of the key Steelers beat writers, they're pretty confident that Martavis is going to slide back into that starting role in two wide receiver sets. And they're even saying that he could kind of get some more of those slants and intermediate routes we've seen Juju really eating. So, Martavis all season, Ben's kind of been missing him on these deep balls and just not able to really establish a floor. But it looks like this week we have kind of as good a chance of any of at least, hoping Bryant sees at least a handful of targets. But I mean, yeah, it's still so hard to get away from AB or Le'Veon. I will say Jesse James should see a few more targets than usual with Vance McDonald out. So always good when we only have one tight end to worry about. But yeah, Le'Veon and AB.
For sure. Freeman, what are your thoughts on Martavis? Obviously a frustrating guy. He was going like really high in redraft leagues and then has sucked so far. Partly because of just some discontent in the franchise. But obviously like this would be the spot for him to get right with Juju out, but also we have to deal with the fact that it is a 14-point spread,
Yeah, I'm super interested in Martavis Bryant, probably too interested for my own good, but he's just going against a Packers secondary that is horrible when healthy, and it's not very healthy. I think they're going to be missing their strong safety, who is really kind of the heart of that secondary. When he's out, it's really bad. And their corners, Devon House, Demarius Randall, Kevin King, all of those guys have like PFF grades like in the 50s, some of them below 50. Like it's bad. So I think wherever Martavis is lining up, he's going to have a pretty nice matchup. So I'm super interested.
That's fair. All right, let's keep on moving and get to some of these other topics that chat wants to get into, both in YouTube and Twitter. Freeman, you wrote the quarterback breakdown this week, as you always do. Cam Newton, he's been running a little bit more lately. So let's just do a real quick real or fake segment. Do you think that is real?
Yeah, I do. I think he's healthy, and he's coming off the bye now too. So even healthier. He will have his tight end back. He will have, I believe his center is going to be returning this week. So, we should see that team at close to full health. So a lot of things in his favor.
Yeah, for sure. Ian, Russell Wilson obviously getting a lot of buzz against the San Francisco team. And fair, his price and his performance lately. But Cam, with his rushing situation right now, like his floor is just so high. I mean, what are your thoughts on him in this matchup here against the Jets?
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup. As Freeman was saying, the expectation was Ryan Khalil would be back. He's active, but they're saying he's not going to play the full amount of snaps and start, but he will be out there with Larson, so that's good. But yeah, I mean, we got a lot to kind of unpack here. Greg Olson's making his long-awaited return, but we're already hearing that he's going to be playing limited snaps, and they're only expecting to have him out there for half the time. Funchess has had terrible splits with Olson active in his career. Obviously, a lot of that is from Funchess playing with Olson when Funchess was a rookie and Kelvin Benjamin was on the other side. But, that matchup with Claiborne obviously doesn't help matters. And the last kind of bit of news we got on this game was Christian McCaffrey apparently working much more out of the slot this week, and them kind of getting him more involved on the outside with Curtis Samuel now out for the season. So like you said, I mean, when we have that nice floor with Cam, his rushing definitely helps. And I think there's definitely going to be a lot of targets going McCaffrey's way.
For sure. All right, let's just touch on a couple more situations here. Let's go to a game that people want to talk about here is the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Chicago Bears. I mean, this is a big spread, Matt. I mean, it's 14 points. I know you do the Vegas article every week. The Philadelphia Eagles are kind of like this season, like the Atlanta Falcons were last year, and sort of how the Patriots have been. Like, it doesn't matter what the spread is. Like, they've just been like smashing and covering. But this is sort of a sneaky tough matchup as far as Chicago limiting their defense limiting big plays. What are your thoughts on Philly here? Obviously, a pretty nice total at 28.8. But are you concerned at all about this match?
Yeah, I think there is reason to be concerned, but what is interesting is that I think that concern has been baked into the ownership projections that are seen in our models. And so I think anytime you can get the position players in the league's highest scoring offense at an ownership discount, that's something to take notice of. So it wouldn't be surprising if this game went either way in terms of the Eagles failing to hit their implied total or something like that. But if they did, I mean, it's easy to see how the game spins out of control and they could totally crush the Bears.
Sure.
Who are just fragile on offense. So it is interesting with the ownership discount. I don't know. I don't think it's a situation to fade.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. And last thing on this before we get out of here, Ian, weird situation with Blunt and Ajayi. You know, they acquired Ajayi, and then last week we sort of think that like that's all right. He's been in the offense a couple weeks. This is the week that he's actually going to like be the lead guy, and then Blunt out touches him. You think that is the case this week, or is it maybe Ajayi moving forward?
It's a tough call, man. I don't think there's really much reason for us to suspect that Ajayi is all of a sudden going to become this featured guy. I mean, other than just a gut feel. I mean, they were coming off a bye week last week. You know, reports had said that Ajayi had picked up the playbook super fast and things were going great. I mean, you pointed out in your market share article this week, like Ajayi wasn't even a guy in the first half last week. So obviously, you know, if they're not going to feed him when they get ahead of a game like they were last week against Dallas, they're not going to feed him in the first half. It's really hard to find out when any of these backs are going to get the ball. Because in addition to Blunt and Ajayi, you know, we got Corey Clement sticking his head in there for 8-10 touches of the game as well. So,
definitely a frustrating situation. All right, last question here, Matt. I'll kick to you. You have at times on our Flex podcast predicted the Cleveland Browns to win. Is this the week? I know that Bales and the Three Donkeys said that this line does not account for Corey Coleman's greatness. So what are your thoughts on the Browns this week?
Yeah, I mean, every week is a good week to bet on the Browns. So no, I'm kind of joking about that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I honestly, this is a hard line kind of for me to read. I think it's going to be a sort of nothing type of game. Although wouldn't it be surprising on the other side of that to see Dalton go off against the Browns because he's punished them recently. So that's how I could kind of see this going. But yeah, from the other side, the Bengals are a pretty good defense. So I think it's a tough matchup for them.
Yeah, obviously this is not a great game to target for DFS.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I know a lot of sharp people who are interested in Duke Johnson just long term. So yeah, worth thinking about. All right, we're going to end it there on the Browns. As always, good luck this week, guys. Good luck in week 12. Hope to see Fantasy Labs guys at the top of the leaderboards, and we will talk to you guys for week 13.